When she arrived in Utah, her feet were so severely frostbitten that the doctor said the only way to save her life is to cut off her legs. And her dad said she didn't walk 1,000 miles to have her legs cut off. If she's going to die, she'll die with her feet on. So they didn't do the surgery, but there was a local woman who said that if you wrap her legs in steaks, fresh beef, it can help them heal. So James, her and her father walked 24 miles from Brigham City to Ogden twice a week to get fresh beef so that he could pack his daughter's legs. It was 3 years before she was able to walk. When she was 98, after having, I think 13 children, raised them all, had a huge posterity, it was time for her to go. She walked every day of her life in pain because her calves had fallen off and the bottoms of her feet had fallen off. And her last words were, just think my feet don't hurt. I finally conquered my feet after all. 98. So Robert comes, he settles in Utah, he goes back and forth helping immigrants come across. And what was interesting this week, why Emma, Owen, and Grace aren't here, is they were in the same spot. They were in what we consider in our family sacred ground. And they were trekking as pioneers, no cell phones, disconnected from the world so that they could connect to their pioneer heritage. They could connect to each other. We couldn't communicate with them. That picture was one that one of the leaders took so that we could have it. But they wanted to disconnect them from the world so that they could connect to the real world. Emma trekked for Eliza, who was the mother of Emma, Sarah, and Mary. Owen trekked for Robert. And Grace trekked for Caroline. And Owen said that, this process, what he realized is how hard it must have been for Robert to have buried his dad. But dads are supposed to die, but burying his little sister would have been hard, even harder. And he cried and Grace cried because they had this connection. Now the interesting thing about this story and why it's so important is because we can connect to it. And Cincy wouldn't exist if Robert Reeder had given up. Because he's the one who brought us to the West. I don't know how my life would have been formed, how it would have played out, if I would have had my contribution to Cincy without that legacy that he gave me. And if I wasn't living my life in a way where I was contributing to others, what would he have done that for? Why sacrifice that much if what you leave behind doesn't care or doesn't do anything with it? So there's a deep connection that we have to people. This connection is something that is basically what our legacy is. And these stories tell us a few things. One, if your destination is compelling enough, the sacrifice of the journey will be worth it. The second thing is, the more difficult the journey, the harder it is to live to tell the tale.